Basics of how to write your introduction speech. I'm going to share our screen. Show you. I want to take a advanced look. All right, team. I'm going to go ahead and stretch that out. Stretch this out. Awesome. So can everybody see the PowerPoint screen? And just, of course, send me a chat if you, for some reason, cannot. But otherwise, we are going to get going here and starting to talk a little bit about organizing and writing your introduction speech. And a great way to, of course, just start doing that is to look at a prompt. For every speech that you have in this class, I will give you a speech prompt that will give you an overview of the speech and list out the particular requirements. There will be a rubric which you can look at after, or you can look at before, like as a checklist for what your speech requires. But otherwise, the prompt is simply going to set you up and give you a holistic understanding of your goals and what you need to accomplish for this speech. So for the introduction speech, this speech is designed to be brief, but it is designed to allow the audience to get to know you on a more personal level. Now, you can choose whatever you would like to disclose and share with us. But what you will learn a little about from the preparing to speak is that we take into consideration what this occasion is, considering that, when am I speaking for? When am I speaking to? What are these conditions around us? So you introducing yourself maybe to somebody that you're interested in romantically at a bar, or talking to your friend about what you did last weekend is going to be much different than the way that potentially you present yourself to a classroom as, in a professional way. Does that mean that we always need to talk about, serious stuff? No, absolutely not. But I just want you to always consider, so what am I going to share? I am not going to have an exorbitant amount of time. This speech, if you will see here, should be between 2 to 3 minutes in length. And so when we say, okay, yes, you can mention some information, but you're not going to be able to mention all of it. Because hello, 19, 20, 21 years in 2 to 3 minutes, how in the world am I going to do that? Well, that is one of the main challenges when it comes to public speaking. We do not have an unlimited amount of time to speak. And so therefore, we need to pick out only those important elements that are going to be most important for my audience to know in order for my message to either be received or for them to be impacted and that elicit some kind of, in fact, a response. So I want you to consider what you would like to share with us, but you could share about like your background, your cultural background, maybe your schooling before SMC or what you want to do in the future, your family life, your hobbies, your goals, your special interests, career goals, achievements, aspirations, something interesting. Any of those, like if you knew me's, right? Those are all great ones to do as well. But using that above information, you're going to brainstorm and you're going to start to develop your own speech of introduction. And this is what you will do anytime that you're required to give a speech. Somebody will give you an idea of what you are to speak about, right? Some kind of prompt. And they're like, all right. Or for example, typically what you'll have is like, oh, here is, you're going to do a report on blank, and then you're going to present that report finding back to us. Has anybody done that before in their class? Hannah, are you there?
Yes.
Have you ever had to do a speech like where they're like, oh, here, write something and then tell us about it?
Kind of. When I was in high school, I took this AP Lit class and I had to basically like analyze a whole poem for like 30 minutes or so.
Oh, and so you went through and taught the whole thing.
Yeah, basically I was teaching the class about the poem and like the significance behind it all.
Oh, great. Excellent job.
Yeah.
I don't know about y'all, but sometimes when, yeah, okay, so Fanny, you were saying yes, absolutely, because when we have the, yeah, those, the, what was I going to say? Many of us, the speaking experiences that we've had, it's like, oh, I wrote a report and now let me give it, or okay, let me break this down and let me like tell you about it. But this idea of like, then what do I include? I can't include all elements. The fact that you have 30 minutes was awesome. I wonder, Hannah, how it would have been if it was like, okay, you have 5 minutes to tell us about that 30 minutes stuff, right? Because for all of you, for example, like when I was saying, oh my gosh, talk about, your favorite Barcelona team, if you will, Eric, then we can absolutely talk about Barcelona, but what am I going to inform you about enough to give you enough information in 2 minutes about that Barcelona team, whereby you could probably talk for an hour and a half. So really understanding and how to narrow our focus is what we will be doing a lot this semester, and focusing in on what our audience needs to know in order to get our goals accomplished. So the idea here is that next time you are required to like write a paper and then report on it, you know that you're not going to like read the whole paper in front of the class. That'd be exhausting. You're going to pick out a part from your introduction and set it up, and then you're going to tell us what you found, like a couple, 2 things that support it, and then you'll conclude it. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. So as you see, you will be developing a speech of introduction about yourself. You'll use an attention getter. You will write a specific purpose. You'll develop main points with clear transitions, and you will write a memorable conclusion. Again, if you do not know what any of these things are, or you have not taken your English class yet, or you are really confused on a thesis, don't worry, that's what today is for. And that is what I am here for. And that is what I am going to help you all out with. So a couple friendly reminders. Remember, this speech is 2 to 3 minutes in length. I would certainly keep your introduction format out, if you will, for some kind of like guidance as we go through. For now, which I'm realizing, let me grab that introduction speech format, or at least show it to you. Did y'all have that pulled up on your screen somewhere? I'm sorry, I didn't have that pulled up. I need to shrink this. Let me grab that real quick, y'all. Thank you for your patience. All right. If you haven't seen on Canvas thus far, there is a document called the introduction speech format that you can download. I will show you really quickly what that looks like. And so you can see here, basically your structure is going to start out with an introduction. You will then go into a transition. You'll go into main point number 1, transition, main point number 2, transition, main point number 3, and conclude. And so like I was saying, if you have one piece of paper up front and back with you, you can very much simply write these things in together if that's what you would like to do. But know that this format is the one that we will be following. For anybody who has taken a basic English class, this format may look very familiar. Does it look familiar to anyone? Maybe. And yes, Ford, these are all on Canvas for you to look back at. So does anybody, has anybody taken their basic like English class and such? For writing? Okay. If you haven't, no worries. The best part is that this format is very similar to that of what we see in in an English class, things that you learn in how to write. And so the thing that I want to encourage each of you is that if you are familiar with that same kind of format, an introduction, a body paragraph, a conclusion, you're on the right track. And those things are very similar that we do. However, what is not the same as an English class is our writing. So what are those two large differences in speaking and writing? For anyone who can. How about Azalea, are you there? All right, let me give it to y'all. How about that? So here's the deal, is that when we write, we are writing with somebody in mind that is, and everybody, I do not know how to quit these messages. I don't know how to turn them off. I don't know how to do anything. Don't play the sound. There we go. Okay, I turn off the sound. That'll help. All right. What I want each of us to know is that when it comes time for us to write our speech, we want to write as we would talk. Because if we're writing as we would write, we are oftentimes writing to an author of whom we can't see and who we don't know. The great part about public speaking is your audience is right in front of you and you can talk directly, in fact, to them. And you would never speak in the way that we write because it's also a higher level of writing. When we are speaking in public speaking, it is best to use simpler sentences, to use more common language, to break things down so that it is easier to comprehend verbally rather than written, because your audience can't go back and review. So there are a lot of differences in speaking and writing, but there are a great amount of similarities in terms of the structure and our approach to ensuring that the message is clear. The most important thing is that when you are writing this speech, and how I encourage people to start to, in fact, write that, is that you write your speech out in your voice. So what does that mean? Well, that means that how would I say it to a friend? That's how I should write it. Do not start writing your speech how you would write a paper or if you were writing a discussion to introduce yourself, because that writing style is not your speaking style. When individuals try to speak try to deliver their speech in the way that they read it, they will oftentimes stumble and get confused because that isn't their typical way of speaking. It also makes them a little bit more uncomfortable because it isn't something that you are definitely doing. So make sure to write out your speech in your own voice and practice that speech out loud as you write it. It is also an excellent way for you to then start to get it in your body and start to see if that makes sense. And if it works and it flows, then absolutely. So I really want to encourage you on those two levels to start to write your speech in your own voice and utilizing that voice, and then practicing that out loud as you go. So let's continue to go through, and what I'm going to go over today is I'm going to go over your introduction, writing thesis, transition statements, developing your main points, creating a memorable ending, and delivering this speech. And whatever we get around to, we get around to. Otherwise, this will be available for you to go back and watch later on, like this week. So the first thing that I want to talk about is your introduction. So everybody, y'all, in your entire career, all speeches that you ever give will always start out with an introduction. But that introduction is always going to start with the first thing, and that is an attention getter. So we are going to have 3 different things that we will go over for your introduction. These are required, and you can see that at the format at the top of the page. It's like attention getter, reveal topic, explicitly state your thesis. Let's go over what these things are and how to write them together, and then hopefully that will give you some understanding. But every single speech that you give will start out with an attention getter. An attention getter is a rhetorical strategy. It is designed to get your audience engaged and to hook them into hearing what you have to say. If I came out in my first speech and said, "Hello, everybody, my name is Amanda. I'm going to tell you a little bit about snails." Okay, so now we know it's about snails. How many of us are, interested in these snails? I don't know how many, but I'm certainly not getting anybody interested who isn't already interested in snails, interested in it. I certainly would be like, I don't want to know about snails. I'm here mandatorily. Oh my gosh, I'm going to check out for the next 3 minutes. So what do we need to do? I need to give you a piece of information or a statement or a joke or something that is going to so dynamically get you engaged in snails that by the time you get around to revealing that topic and saying, "Hey, I'm going to talk about snails," people are like, "I can't wait to hear more." So let's talk about some of those attention getting devices. Well, for every speech, will thesis be necessary? Yes, every speech will have these. So that's the good news, y'all. This format is the same format that you will use for every single speech. And every single speech will have an attention getter, reveal topic, and a thesis statement. There will be another element added for the informative and for the persuasive. But if you can get these 3 things going, you will understand it. The other thing is that a thesis statement, in the way that we're going to write it in public speaking, has no connection really. Well, not really. It's more of a, if you want to call it a main idea statement. If thesis statement makes you feel a little bit like, I can't stand those things, don't worry. It's all it is a main idea statement. It's where you're previewing what we're going to talk about and how you're going to talk about it. And I will walk you through exactly how to formulate it each time so that it doesn't have to be something that's like daunting, but instead something that's guiding. And so we don't want to just come out, again, and say whatever. We want to have these attention getting devices. And so there are a lot of different ways that we can engage our audience. And there's a lot of different strategies that you will continue to learn over this semester. However, a couple that you can start to think of right now and that can get you started are listed on the screen here. So the first one is a story. I love a great story. If you have a story and if you're a good storyteller, if we can see, if we can feel, if we can hear, if you can use your body to engage us, tell us a little bit of the story to start, right? That's always a great way to maybe situate like a theme that you're running through. Like if it's perseverance and you have always like worked hard, then maybe, giving a story about that perseverance at the top. Could be something that you could do, and then go into like how you persevere today. Those are maybe your like 2 to 3 main points. The other thing that you can do is give a joke. So a joke is always a great way to start a speech. However, if you don't tell a good joke, then do not do this one. And you also need to know like that your joke is going to land. There is nothing worse than preparing and starting your speech with a joke that nobody is into, and then it's going to really deflate for you, just those feelings of confidence, but also for us as an audience, when somebody tells a joke and it doesn't land, it's not always even uncomfortable for the speaker. It's really more uncomfortable like for the audience as well, right? So if we're telling a joke, make sure it's a joke that we are going to get, that we are going to understand, and that is appropriate and is going to work in some way. Because this speech is about you, you will start to learn that all of your attention getting devices need to be in relation to the speech itself. So even if it's a fun like joke about you, that would be great. But really watch our etiquette and our ethical responsibility to those in class when we're making jokes about specific things of ourselves. We don't know if somebody else maybe had also done that and didn't consider it a joke. Then we also have statistics. You can always use numbers if you wanted to get us interested, like how many times you've done something, or perchance, is there a shocking number that you're like, what? Who would have guessed this is happening in the world around us? And that's maybe something that you're interested in. So you can give us sometime a statistic or a shocking fact, some kind of startling statement to engage us. People will do this all the time about things that, they do. I sleep 12 hours a day. And then, what? And then what is the actual answer you could give, following up, but at least getting us shocked to start out is a fun way. And then the last thing that we have here is a question. And there's a couple tricks with the question in public speaking. Like I said at the beginning of the class, or at the beginning of this lecture, we have somebody that we can in fact speak to, our audience. They are there and they are live. On our Zoom platform, our individuals will more than likely have themselves muted, and it's in a different capacity. That when you're giving a presentation in person, there are some factors that we need to take in. So if I wanted to ask a question, there's two different ways: a rhetorical question and a direct question. A direct question is one that would elicit a response. It's when you want your audience to participate. And so you would do something like, if I was in person, I said, how many, and I came in, and I said, oh, how many of you have ever been to Disneyland? And you knew I was starting a speech. More than likely, the audience will start to look around and then maybe raise their hand or something as they go along. Because of the norms and rules of how we have been socialized in situations where there is one person speaking and everybody else is listening, like a classroom, individuals, when somebody's giving something like a speech, will not always participate. And so if you do want them to respond, then it's important that you say that out loud and let them know how to do so. We don't want to just ask the question in general, because those people who do want to respond to everything may just take it and run with it. So it's like, how many of you have been to Disneyland? Some people are looking around, and then that one person in the back is like, oh my gosh, I totally have been, and this is what I love, and this is what I love to do. And then by the time, your 2 minutes is up, that person has spoken the whole time. So we could do something like by a show of hands. So if you were in person, that not only has you put your hand up, but you're verbally saying it so that your audience recognizes what they are to do and what they are to do to participate. Instead, and the only reason that you would want, by the way, somebody to raise their hand is if you are going to acknowledge that amount of individuals in the future of your speech. If you're going to go back and relate to that. Otherwise, a question just to see how many people alongside you are doing it isn't an effective attention getter. You may want to try something else, and that's a rhetorical question. A rhetorical question instead does not demand an answer, but allows the audience to think and potentially arrive at where you are going with this question by the time they get done. So, for example, a rhetorical question if you've ever been in a classroom before where somebody comes in late, and really quickly, let me just go through this. The word rhetorical is a word that you will start to learn in this class more and more. Rhetoric also means the art of persuasion. And so when we're talking about ourselves in this class and we want to be rhetorical, or we want to engage in some kind of, or you hear the word rhetoric, which you will hear a lot in the world, it simply means the art of persuasion. It doesn't mean that I'm just persuading you, because that's not something that can be done. It is an art form, and it is an artistic thing. You get all your tools and you are you get all your skills and you get all your materials together, and then you start to construct an argument that is going to make the most sense and not just something that you throw out on a page. So this rhetorical question is a strategy of persuasion, but it also is allowed to get the audience to where you need to go. So if somebody's ever come in late to your classroom and the instructor has said, do you know what time this class started? If you've ever heard something like that, you know that the teacher doesn't want that person to respond and be like, oh yes, 8 o'clock. Be like, no, okay, then good. The answer is yes, then be here at that time. But by them asking that question, it simply lets them know that now the teacher knows that you're late. The teacher knows that you know you're supposed to be here at 8 o'clock. And who else also knows? Well, just everybody else in the classroom also knows what behavior they need to do to not be, put in that position as well. So keeping that in mind, you are more than welcome to talk to the audience and have them consider a statement or a question that can draw them. So you can always preface that by saying something like, take a minute and think about. And that's a great way to let your audience know to consider this question, and you let us know how you are going to follow up on that. These are simply a starting point for you to do your speech, but you are more than welcome to utilize maybe something else that you've thought about. If you want, I've had somebody sing, somebody dance. I mean, we've had a lot of fun things that have gone on in these attention getting devices. The most important thing is that you are going to need to lead into that reveal of topic from the attention getter. And there are key things that need to happen. So the reveal topic portion of the speech is finally where we let the audience know, oh, this is what the speech is about. And you need to connect that from your attention getter. So the topic of this speech is the reason that we open our mouths. So our job is to connect this to us and to help people get to know us better. And so if the topic of this speech is you, then like I said before, when we're starting our attention getter, in some way, shape, or form, this attention getter should be about you. Maybe a story, like I said, about you, a fact about you, a shocking statistic, a question that will illuminate maybe something about who you are and what you enjoy. So the first thing that we are going to do is you want to make that connection for your audience. So what did we talk about in that attention getter that then we can resolve? So if you're telling a story about something that maybe you did that was absurd, how do you resolve that and let us know that this is you and this is this quality and this is what I was talking about? So for example, if I say something like, this is an example I often use, something like, I don't know about you, but I certainly consider myself a thrill seeker. Don't get me wrong. I don't like to jump off of buildings. I don't like fast roller coasters. I don't even like to go fast in the car. So you may be thinking, how am I a thrill seeker? Well, my name is Amanda. I am, and so this is where I'm going to go into revealing my topic, aka my name is Amanda. And I find thrill seeking both through my job and also through my hobbies. And those are some things that I'm going to talk about today in order for you to get to know me a little bit better, right? So when we are leading in, that's what you want to go in and start to do. Or it could be something like, are you a thrill seeker? I may not be jumping off of buildings. I may not be riding roller coasters, but how I do thrill seek is in my job as a chef. And right, so yeah, that's how you could tell us maybe in that way. Is this making sense to you individuals here? Are we getting it? Can I see can you say yes or no, or ask any questions that you need, please? Along this way, stop me all the time and be like, Amanda, what do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? Okay, great. Thank you for it. I appreciate it. Okay, cool. So what we're going to do in our reveal topic, the first thing, obviously, you want to make that connection. And then you want to give a little bit about yourself. So when you meet somebody for the first time, what do? We don't necessarily say, hey, hi, I'm from Hawthorne. No, we usually give our name first. And I can't tell you how many people forget to give their names in this speech. You are not going to come out giving your name. You come out with your attention getter. Those are the first words that you are going to say. But when you do meet somebody for the first time, you say your name. So make sure that in this reveal topic portion, that's where you give us who you are. There's a couple other things that you're going to do as well. In the reveal topic portion of this speech, this is an opportunity for you to tell us any background information that we may need to know before we get to the actual speech itself. So is there any type of content? Now, the speech is about you, and you're talking simply about us, to us about you and maybe your hobbies and maybe some things you like to do. We are not going to need a lot of background information for this speech. However, if I'm talking about a theory or a concept, maybe later on in the semester, then more than likely, I will need to do a little bit of background information to get my audience caught up before they, in fact, get into that speech. We do this because almost like, again, to keep our audience engaged and interested in every part of our speech making process is our key idea. And so if we are starting to talk about something that they don't know, they are more than likely to get distracted or to just stop listening altogether. If you think about watching TV shows and you think about like something like, oh, I'm going to just catch up on, I'm just going to start Game of Thrones season 6, episode 1, 2. I don't know if you're going to be able to pick it up. And I don't think you're going to want to keep it on, and you're probably going to change the channel. We don't want any of our friends to change the channel. So in this case, you'll be giving any background information, any technical jargon or language that your audience may need to know. Most of the time, that's not even going to be a big thing because of our basic audience. We're going to want to use the most common and comfortable connected language that we absolutely can. So for each of you, I think a great idea in this reveal topic portion is simply to highlight some of those key elements of ourselves that will not be mentioned in the body of the speech, but you want to tell us. And so something, for example, like I said, I may not be a thrill seeker in the traditional way, but I am in the kitchen. My name is Amanda. I'm 19 years old. I'm a second year here at Santa Monica College. And ultimately, one day, I want to own my own restaurant and become known as one of the most top chefs in the world. Right? So that was a way for us to gain the attention, for us to travel through, and for you to know how those two things connect, travel or thrill seeking and myself. And then what we're going to do is we're clearly going to go in and tell us more about us. So does everybody understand what that reveal topic portion is? Yeah, good. Maybe kind of, yep. Okay, good. So let us then move along. We've now established the attention getter. You then have revealed your topic. And the final thing is you are going to do is give your thesis statement. The thesis statement is the guiding sentence that explicitly tells your audience what to expect in your speech. Although you may have taken English classes before where it's like these thesis statements and it seems like it's the big overlying concept, in public speaking, we have to tell them exactly what we're going to be doing and exactly how we're doing it. Nobody has a piece of paper in front of them to follow along with you. You will not have a PowerPoint of your entire presentation with you. And so therefore, we rely on different strategies in our language and things like writing a speaking thesis or utilizing transitions in a repetitive way to help our audience. So the last sentence of your introduction is always going to be that thesis statement or that main idea statement, if you will. These two key points right here are of most importance. You are going to have two parts to your thesis statement. You're going to have the what, AKA what your speech is about, and that is also known as your specific purpose. Then your thesis statement should talk about how you will tell us what your speech is about. And those, in fact, are your main points. So what is this speech about? If you look back to the speech prompt, it says, so that prompt says, a speech of introduction should be brief, but is designed to allow the audience to get to know you on a more personal level. So what's this speech about, y'all? You and getting to know you. So the what, we know, getting to know me better. Check. That's the what. Your speeches will always have this prompt. The speech of information is designed to inform an audience about a person, place, thing, and object, right? So it would simply be to inform my audience about the career of Kobe Bryant. That will be your what? To persuade my audience to recycle their clothing. That's your what. So you will continue to use this what throughout, but today it's simply, to get to know me better. How are we going to do that? Well, that's the second part, but let's look at this what still. So in our class, what you will also start to note is that we do something called this is all posted, yes, on Canvas. So this PowerPoint is in module 1. Well, it's your week 1, module 2. So keep that in mind. All these handouts are there. So remember that your goal, and if you have yet to watch the Preparing to Speak, let me tell you now. In this class, we deliver our speeches extemporaneously. Extemporaneous, which you will learn also from your syllabus quiz, means being fully prepared, but delivering from a brief set of notes. And so what that means is that you are going to write out your speech in full, like, okay, write it out. This is what I'm going to say. But then what I encourage each of you to do is to make instead then speaker's notes that can help jog your memory of what you want to say. This speech is about you. And extemporaneous speaking allows us to have the freedom and the flexibility within our speaking. There are 4 different types of oratory, and the first type being memorization is not something you are going to do. Memorizing becomes robotic if you haven't been seasoned in memorization. And it also is going to trip you up because if you forget a part, then you don't know where to go because you haven't had that freedom of flexibility to be like, oh, this is simply what I'm talking about, not this is how I have to say it. When we speak extemporaneously, it shows us that you understand the idea and it sounds like we're having an everyday conversation. It's really what I've been doing this entire time and speaking with you is that I have these brief set of notes and I can expand upon them. I know them, but it allows for me not to sit there and memorize. It also allows me to not read. You will not be allowed to read your speeches in this class. So reading often will also become very boring. It becomes monotone and it communicates to our audience that you do not know what you are speaking about. If I need to read the entire thing, I'm not making eye contact, I'm not engaging in doing the things that public speaking are. If you think about why child rearers read to children before they go to bed, it's because it has that same sound, that same tone, da 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 da, right? And when we speak and we're telling a story, our voice has natural inflection and it has these natural characteristics to it, rather than having it be so precise in that way that we learned how to read or how to speak in English. So we don't do that. We also don't impromptu speak. That's just speaking off the cuff and like hoping for the best, right? These are the things that you do when you answer in class. So you told me a little bit about what your year was and such. We will allow for that kind of impromptu and extemporaneous, but we want to be fully prepared. And so extemporaneous means fully prepared, but delivering from a brief set of notes. That if somebody's giving you a face in the classroom that's like, or over Zoom, that's like, then you know that they don't understand. And so what you can do is stop and say, it looks like some of you may not be fully familiar with it. Let me tell you in a different way. Or if you get a time signal and you know you have to cut, but you need to include a couple things, then you know what to cut and you know how to adapt from that. These are those moments when people say, I forget what I was going to say, and then I got totally messed up, and then I was on it. It's more than likely we were not following this extemporaneous type of delivery. And so practicing with, do not practice with your full speech. Only practice with your notes, those key words and phrases. Because if you practice with your full speech, you're going to memorize it and you're going to think that it has to be that exact same way. If you have notes, it may be different every single time that you do it, but you know where you want to go. And it may end up becoming a little bit memorized after a while, but you again will know it and it'll be in your body and you'll be with it practicing with your own personality. So when we are writing our thesis statement, it's imperative that we write, again, how we would speak. You would say me, I, you, because I'm right here and you are right there. We will not write and speak in third person. It would be very awkward. So the what in our case, remember that we know that you are going to get to know you better. I would like to introduce myself. Knowing who I am is done best by. How do you want to say it? So for the first part, of this, let me just enter. What? Maybe for you to know me better. How would you say that? Or, today I would like for you to understand more or understand who I am, or right? However, it makes most sense to you, whatever it is most comfortable, a way for you to say, you're going to get to know me. That's our purpose. So this is all the what, AKA your specific purpose. Then we need to know the next one. How in the world are you going to then let us get to know you? So for you to get to know me better, yeah, which ways? Well, through those main points. And these are those body paragraphs, if you will, or where we start to develop who we are and what that content is. These main points are the backbone of your talk. They play an important role in helping you prioritize and helping you focus and sequence your information. So this is where I want you to start to think about, what do I want to tell my audience? I gave you those ideas up at the beginning of your speech. Things like maybe you want to talk about your hobbies, or you want to talk about your career goals or aspirations. Those could be your main points, but we want to consider how many main points that we should have. And so when you are going through any speech, it is important that we start to think about balance. We know we have to have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. It is suggested that your introduction is no more than 15 to 20% of your speech. And in this case, that means let's start out by having your introduction maybe be between 30 and 45 seconds in length. You then go through and we'll have the body of this speech, and then you have the conclusion, which is recommended, about 10% of your speech. The conclusion is much shorter than that, even that introduction. So how much time does that then give us to spend on our main points? If I spend, 30 seconds and 30 seconds, that's a minute. That gives me a whole extra 2 minutes to spend on the body of this speech. But if I end up doing like 45 seconds, 3 minutes, then I need to figure out how to balance. The bottom line here, and my suggestion, is that a speech of 2 to 3 minutes should have no more than 3 main points, and ideally it should only have 2, because then you can, and it just depends on how much you can expand upon your topic. So if I want to talk about sports and my passion for sports, I mean, can I do that in 30 seconds? Maybe I can, but am I going to be able to really understand your connection and what you feel for that? Taking time into that consideration is really important. The other thing that you want to consider is a construction of organizational pattern for your main points. And I want to make a clearer idea really quickly, is that, oh wait. Organizing our main points, there are different ways that we can choose to, in fact, think about this organization. And again, everything that we're doing in this first lecture is going to be reviewed again and expanded upon in your other parts of the semester, especially this in terms of organizing these main points. But a fun way to think of this is your pattern of organization. So how am I going to organize these main points most effectively so that my audience can comprehend the topic? If you think about something like, for example, here at the bottom, it's showing you 2 different examples that I think you can use for this speech. And one is topical organization and one's chronological organization. I'll start with chronological because it'll make a little bit more sense. Then when we are organizing a speech, and let's say I'm going to inform you about the events of 9/11. To inform you about the events of 9/11, I'll tell you about when planes hit the Pentagon. I'll tell you what happened before the attacks. Then I'll tell you when they hit the Twin Towers. Then I'll tell you what happened at the end of the experience. That's all over the place and it makes no sense. If we logically think about it, when we read about history, it's going to start with a backstory, how they get into it. Here's the events that happen in historical order, and then it will go like, what was the impact and the aftermath? Chronological order is a pattern that your audience is familiar with, and it goes in order of time. So if you were talking about somebody, for example, you all, a person, you could also do this in like a timeline organization if you wanted to, like the first part of your life, second part of your life, third part of your life. You could also do something like past, present, future. So for you to get to know me better, I'll tell you a little bit about my past, my present, and finally what I am thinking about doing in the future. However, if that's not something that you want to do and go in that chronological timeline, a more common pattern for this speech is often the topical organization. Thinking about topical organization, that's simply where you're organizing your speech by individual topics. Now, those topics are going to relate to the purpose of the speech, which is in this case, you. And so in this case, what are 2 to 3 different topics that you would like to tell us about? This is where you would say something like, oh, I'll tell you about my hobbies, my job, and my family. Maybe those are the 3 characteristics I'd like to talk about. They don't have to go in any order. It doesn't make any sense for them to have to go in a timeline, but it is in fact 3 unique things about you. I also let you know that if you wanted to, you could present some kind of theme about us. Maybe you look like you want to tell us about like a characteristic or a quality of you. So something like determination, or something like, that you're a phoenix rising from the ashes. You could do something like that. And how will you do so? I want to explain to you a little bit more about me today, how I'm a phoenix rising out of the ashes. And I'll tell you a little bit about how about my immigration story. And then I'll tell you a little bit about the ability to purchase my own home, right? Something like that. So these ways that maybe you were able to show that nothing was going to hold you down, and you'll tell us those stories throughout. So really start to think about what you want to talk about and maybe how you want to organize that. Does anybody have any questions about this concept or idea and what those hows are, these main points? So remember, you want to choose about 2 to 3 things to talk about. And like I said before, what do you love and want to talk about? What's going to help us understand who you are? What are the best things and, what's relevant and interesting to your audience? So if you put that together, a thesis becomes, in my opinion, a bit more easy. So something like, for you to get to know me better, I will tell you about my family, my job, and my favorite hobby. And that's the way that you could do it. Or a thesis, for you to get to know me better. Yeah, so that's the whole thing. Or if you wanted to say something like, to get to know me better, I will describe my past and my present. Or to get to know me, to get to know my thrill-seeking self, I will describe my love for travel and exotic foods. So going back to that example, like I did before, and I would make the statement, and we can put those all three pieces together. We came up here. Oops. We could say something like, again, many of you may not think about thrill seeking in the same way that I do. I don't like to ride roller coasters. I don't think jumping off of buildings is a great idea. I don't even like really trying new experiences. But I still consider myself a thrill seeker. And how is that? Well, that's through my love of cooking and cooking exotic foods. My name's Amanda. I am 19 years old. I'm currently a sophomore at Santa Monica College. And to get to know me better today, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my current job. I'll tell you a bit about my family. And then finally, I'll end by letting you in on how I thrill seek in my everyday career as a chef. Does that make sense to everyone? Kind of, sort of. And so what I did is I gave my attention getter, I revealed my topic, I told you about me, gave you a little bit of information, and then I also gave you that thesis statement. So does anybody have any questions about how to write the attention getter, your reveal topic, or your thesis statement? Does it make sense that this is all about you, that it should be written in your own voice, and then it should be designed to be simple and easy? Are we all getting that? Yeah, okay, I'm gonna assume yay. Okay, yes, it all makes sense. Thanks for it. Okay, great. All right, team, then what I am going to do is I will say, let me just see here really quickly. These next parts are going to go a bit quicker, so let me go in. Once you have then, and if you're looking at your format, you will see that we have these things called transitions. Transitions are required for you to use before every main point. So if you have two main points, then guess what? It will be two transition statements. So making sure that you are having these transitions. Again, transitions are a way to allow the audience to know that you are moving. We are literally moving you from place to place. And so if it's moving us both, and let me go with this one, it's going to move us both literally, and then it's going to move us also figuratively. So let's go over figuratively first. Let's talk about how to do this transition. A transition, you may know, or it's going to have three different parts. You're going to have a signpost, your main point, and then your specific purpose, which you already have, right? So you know your main points and your specific purpose from your thesis statement. And that's what we're going to do. So let's look at a signpost. The first thing that you're going to do is give us a signpost. This is simply a signaling word that lets your audience know what's happening. It's something like first, second, third, next, finally, to begin, starting off, let's move forward. Come along with me now, right? Any of those words that let our audience know that something new is going on and happening. They don't have the ability to follow along. And it's those words that are going to make you effective and keep your audience on track. So if you are using a first and you are using a second, then make sure that you don't go first, second, finally. Those three things aren't the same. First, second, third, right? That would be the way to do it. So signposts are simply let you know what's coming up next. Think about a signpost that you see on the street, a stop sign, right? Then you have a review preview, is what I'm saying. These transitions, oh, is that what they said? Okay. The transition serves to move you to these main points with ease. And so what we need to next bring in are something like our main points, right? So what main point or points do we want to review and preview? So we want to tell them what point we're going into. So if I was going into my first main point of that speech thesis that I gave you, I'd say something like, let's get started by first looking at my job. And that's it. But if I was going into my second main point, I could in fact review what we just talked about and then preview what I'm going to talk about next. Something like, now that I told you a little bit about my job, I'd next like to tell you a bit about my family, right? And so now I have reviewed it and you remember what we were talking about and you were very clear that you have left that and we are coming forward to the next one. And although that may sound a bit redundant, I'm going to show you how to mix it up. The last thing that you need in your transition statement is your specific purpose. And remember, that is to get to know me better. So for this speech, it may sound a bit redundant because it's so short, but it's going to help you keep on track. And you don't have to say to get to know me better every single time. So we can say something like, first, I'd like to start out by talking about my job so you can get to know me better. And then after I go into the next one, so I told you a little bit about my job. Hopefully that gets you knowing more who I am and what I'm about. Next, I'd like to tell you about my family. Right, so I didn't say the exact same, I mixed it up. I used my own voice to do it. So as long as we're understanding that this is about getting to know you, and here's your main point, that's what your transition really needs to be. But try to utilize some of those effective ways of transitioning. We are going to come across other ways like using a theme or using a story or using rhetorical questions throughout the course of the semester. So keep that in mind. But for now, a simple one like a first, second, third, I'd like to tell you about myself by letting you know about my family. Now, the only other thing that I'm going to encourage you, and I'm going to get up and take this upstairs real quick, so I'm going to give some space. But what I want to encourage each of you is that you are going to be also we will be, for this first speech, you are going to be standing and utilizing the space in your area, wherever you are. So there is an entire, there's something there that's going to let you know about how to set up your staging and how to get ready and how to prepare best for your speech. And oftentimes, especially if we are delivering these speeches online, we are more than likely not going to always be standing up. But I also know that in your life, you are not going to always be sitting down in front of a computer. So we're going to do both parts of this in this class, whereby the first speech you are going to stand, and then your second and third speeches, you'll have the option of standing, sitting, using a combination, and you'll see whatever is most comfortable for you. But for this first speech, we are going to stand. And what we are going to be utilizing is something that we call, and I don't know if I wrote it in here, no, I didn't. But what we are going to be going into, and it says it on your sheet there, is something called the speaker's pyramid. So the speaker's pyramid, just really quickly, if you want to know about this, the speaker's pyramid is designed to, again, literally and figuratively, like, move your audience with you. So if I'm here, if we think about your main point, like if I'm starting, will be the tip of the pyramid. And this is where I deliver my introduction and conclusion. So I'd say something, I'd do my, just do this. So, hi, I'm Amanda. I'm 19 years old. I'm currently a sophomore at Santa Monica College. And for you to get to know me a little bit better today, I'm going to tell you about my family and also my job. So first, for you to get to know me a little bit better, I'm going to tell you about my family. And this allows you to start that movement. So what I've done is I've moved out to this side of the pyramid. If you're thinking about the bottom now, it's like that long base flat line. So we're going to do it in 3 different points. So this would be my first transition. And then as I move from my next transition, I do the same thing. So now that I told you a little bit about my job or my family, I'd next like to tell you a little bit about my job so that you can know more about me. And then we talk about that. And then as we get ready to move back or move to our conclusion, we move back to the pyramid point. Today, I told you a little bit about my job and I told you about my family, all in hopes that you could get to know me a little bit better. And then you go into the last part of that. Does this make, again, I'm going to ask you, but does this make sense in terms of the walking and how that is effective and how that goes? And what you'll be doing? Yeah. So for each of us, like I said, you will have, and let's use this. Don't have my piece of paper with me, but so even if I had my piece of paper, well, no, that doesn't work. There we go. I knew I had sheet music, so I'm looking at it. So even if I have my piece of paper here and I'm holding it, my suggestion as you will start to learn in delivery is that you don't want to hold the entire paper. When we have some apprehension, you can oftentimes, start to shake that paper a little bit. And also it's big and it can get in the way. So I always encourage just to fold your paper in half. And then it can become your notes that you can hold and use like so. And you can continue to practice with them. You open it up and you know exactly which ways that you are going and how to practice with it. And it becomes a natural extension and use and not a distraction instead. So for this first speech, as you begin to work and as you begin to practice, I encourage you to practice that standing up and also ensure that you are practicing where you are going to be speaking so that you can make sure that you have enough room, that you are set up correctly, and that the audience can at least see you and a good portion of your body for this specific speech. Let's see. Let me go back here. We're going to talk really quickly about did our transition right? Okay, so we want to talk about our main points, and the main points here, I'm not, there's not a whole lot to go into. But what I'm going to say is what details and descriptions do I need to share that will inform my audience about me through this point? So what I want to say about this, and let me go ahead and just stop that share real quick, really quickly. Your main points are the meat and potatoes, if you will, of your speech. I've literally been talking for an hour and a half only about thinking about, preparing it, and writing your introduction, which is crazy. But those key parts are incredibly important to set up your speech and to know that format. Now we're getting into the body of the speech, and there's going to be some key parts that I want you to remember when developing and knowing how to narrow your focus and keep on track. The first thing is that if you see on your format, on that speech format there, it will show you that it has the, it says like, main point one, example description, like something like that relates back to the central idea. I'm going to give you an example of how this could work. And then I'm going to give you an example of how it should look. So if you are having a main point and you are describing, and then you are relating back to the central idea, here's an idea of what we will often hear and where we don't want to go. So if I said something like, first, I'm going to tell you about my family so that you can get to know me better. I'm an only child and I have two parents. My mom's name is Judy and my dad's Jack. My mom, Judy, works for a nonprofit organization where she puts after-school programs back into LAUSD schools that have been cut. And my dad, Jack, is a service person by nature. Not only does he do service in all of his volunteer time and all of his volunteer work, but his work when he was, in fact, employed was in service as well. So now that you know about my parents, I'd next like to talk about me. or sorry, not me, about my job. So what did you not learn about in that description? If you're thinking, I learned about your parents, that's correct. But you did not learn about me. I do not want to know about your parents and what they do unless it is going to inform us about you. So let me go back and do the example of my mother. So first, let me tell you a little bit about my parents so you can know me better. I am an only child and my parents are very important to me. I have, my parents are still together, Jack and Judy. Judy is an incredible woman who has worked in nonprofits her entire life. Judy's work in nonprofits have encouraged me to work for service in my own life and have encouraged me to go into my particular occupation, knowing that it doesn't have to be something that benefits only me, that it can be something that I am invested in, that is bettering the lives of those around us. And when I see my mom as an example and all that she has done and accomplished in her career successes and the people she's helped, it encourages me every day to continue the work that I do inside and outside of the classroom. Now that I told you about my mom, let me tell you about my dad. My dad is also in service. So if this makes sense to you, and you don't need to even go into that much detail, but at least I'm trying to connect those two things. The same thing really starts to happen when you think about, so if you're thinking about your hobbies, I really like music and I like sports. Okay. So did 90 other people in this class. What does that mean about you? So I like music. Music is the blood that runs through my veins. I have my earphones on me at all times and I'm listening to music. My favorite kind of music is Blee Blee Blee. When I listen to music, it helps me do whatever, however that is. I love snowboarding. Okay. I love snorting because I love being outdoors. I love feeling the fresh air in my face and in my lungs. It is an opportunity for me to think, to zone out, and to not have to have a care in the world. Oh, now I get to know more about you. So what I want you to do is I want you to describe that main point. Like if you're talking about a hobby, you're like, I like to play rugby. Maybe I described that a little bit. For those of you who don't know, rugby is, it's much like football, but much more violent. Just kidding. But you can talk about what that is. And then you can say, I like rugby because, right? So it's like, describe the main point if we need some description of it. And then relate that back to you. Why does telling us about that you like music help us to get to know you more? What about that? Like, what really do we know about you from knowing it? So like I was saying, I really believe in having only two main points in your speech. When you write it, again, write it in the way that you would say it and just describe that main point. And then the next step, say, okay, this relates to me because, and you can literally say that exact thing, or that this helps you get to know me because, or music is a vehicle to know me because, if that makes sense. So after you have completed that main point, the last thing that you will do is you will go into closing this speech, as you can see here. And so closing this speech is your conclusion. This is where we're going to draw to a close. Do not walk off and just be done and say, okay, that's it. No, instead, we want to have a proper conclusion. So this would be something like what is written here. You're going to have 3 different parts. When I walk back into that triangle. So to close today, right, I could say something like that, or in conclusion, or to wrap things up, or I talked about today a lot of things, but as I end, right, letting your audience know this is coming to an end is the key part of that signpost. Then you'll repeat your thesis statement, right? So I told you a little bit. So to end this speech today, I want to remind you that I told you a little bit about myself through my work and also through my family. I hope that this has allowed you to understand a little bit more about my personality and who I am. And the next time you think about thrill seeking, don't, and the next time you're thinking about thrill seeking and maybe that you don't like to be so thrilling and dangerous and adventurous in the traditional way, remember, throwing a little extra pepper on your food or an exotic fish, like I told you about earlier, can be just as thrilling as anything else, right? So however I started my speech, That is where we want to go back. Was there a theme that you started your speech? How do we resolve that at the end? Did you start out with a quotation that you explained, and then now, having known you, how does that resonate with us? Don't simply like repeat the joke or repeat the punchline. Tell us like, oh, now we get that about you. Or if you start a story, maybe you want to like tell the audience, hold on till the end, I'll let you know at the end what really, like, how this really happened or something, and you can build it up that way. But making sure that we are tying everything up in a bow and bringing it all back full circle. Have you ever been in a situation where somebody's like, oh, okay, so right, we're clapping. That individual did not let us know that they ended their speech in an effective way. We are used to hearing different patterns. That conclusion lets us know. And then also our voice is going to let them know that this is over at the end. I don't need to say thank you or that's it, because my audience should know. They should say something like, so the next time that you are out there and you're thinking about thrill syncing, don't go jump off a building, just throw some extra red pepper on your pizza. And so you can do something like a dip or a nod, or using your vocal expression to let them know that. So that's one of those key ways that you've really ended and people understand that. So I know that was really fast in the last part, but the biggest area for you to get to know about writing this speech is really through that introduction and that description. But hopefully this has allowed you to see the elements that you need for that introduction speech. You'll need an introduction, starting with your attention getter, revealing your topic, and then delivering that thesis statement. After you give that thesis statement, you'll go into your first transition. Let's get started, right? And you'll walk in. Then you'll talk a little bit about what that main point is and remind us of how it relates to you. When you wrap that up, you will move on with a transition to your next point, talk about that one in the same way, and wrap that up. Should you choose to have a third main point, keep on going or keep on moving, and then move back to your pyramid point to finally do the conclusion and deliver that there. And once you're done, we'll give you a big clap and you'll be on your way. But until then, at least for now, you can start to construct this speech and you can work on it. And it really should not take you longer, in my opinion, than an hour. If it's taking you longer than an hour, then maybe we're doing a little bit too much and we're overworking. I encourage you to write out your speech, remember, as you would say it, not how you would write it. But if you were telling a friend this speech, how would you say it out loud? So even like practice what you would say and write that down. And then make your keyword notes and phrases on a piece of paper and start practicing with just that. If there's a part that you keep forgetting every single time, guess what? Go in and write that part in, and then don't have to worry. It'll just be there and you'll know that you'll remember it for next time. If there's a quote that you want to read, you should absolutely have that out loud. If there's a sentence that you wrote that you love, that you're like, oh, I really want to read that, then read it. Extemporaneous speaking, again, allows you that opportunity that you can read a line of your speech, that you can make up something on the spot if somebody doesn't understand what they're talking about, that you can cut parts out if we don't know what it is. So just keep in mind that the notes are going to be incredibly important when delivering your speech and making sure that you're practicing with those so that they work for you. And then finally, making sure that you are practicing out loud. And I say out loud because I am an amazing speaker in my head. Incredible. But when it comes to then saying it out loud for the first time, I'm like, whose voice is what? And then you're hearing your voice and then you're all tripped up in your voice and then you can't think about it. So I encourage you to practice out loud, practice in front of another person, all of those great things. I will, like I said, send all of you a laundry list, I'm sure, a reminder, not really, but I will send you all a reminder of things to think about before the weekend, and then also things to think about before our speech next week. But ultimately, I'm excited for our weeks together, and I hope that you have had at least an informative time understanding what our class is, how to work these speech days and sign up, what exactly you need to be present and participate for, and then finally, how to construct your introduction speech. Are there any other outstanding questions for me before I let you go today? Okie dokie pokies. Then I am going to let you go, and I'm going to say have a great rest of the afternoon, and I will see you all next Tuesday for introduction speeches. Don't forget to sign up for your time, and I will see you then.
May I have a quick question?
Okay, yeah.
So all this stuff that we just learned, it's only for the speeches for when we do it in person, right? It's not for the first little introduction speech that we have to record ourselves with. That makes sense.
Okay, wait, say it one more time.
So what we just learned today, we'll use that for the speeches that we're going to do in person, right?
That is the entire structure for your introduction speech that you will do next Tuesday or Wednesday, sorry, in class.
Okay.
So that is in module 2 of our, our page. Let me pull that up real quick. And so everything that I went over today will be in that module, and you can go back and look through it, and you can go over it again. Like I said, I encourage you to print out that format that I just had, this one right here. And then you can write on that and then use that as your way. And then right here, you'll sign up for your introduction speech next week, and you'll decide which group you want to go in, and you only have to come for that one.
Okay.
And then, but yeah, you will use that same format that we did today to write that speech, but 2 to 3 minutes, super easy, hopefully. And
Okay.
yeah, let me know if you need any other help.
Okay, thank you.
You're so welcome. So welcome. Any other thoughts or questions?
Yeah, I had one question. I was just checking Canvas right now.
Yeah.
Just to make sure I was doing everything. And then I saw that there was like an alert that said I had a missing assignment called delivery comprehension check that was due on March 6th. And I wasn't sure if that was like
I
wasn't
can't believe you weren't in my class last March 6th
yeah. Yeah.
to complete that assignment. That's crazy town. Just kidding. I'm going to change that right now to reflect when it is in fact due, which is next week, and it'll be the 11th. So that'll be September 11th at 11:59. Thank you for making me wear that.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, have a good day.
All right, y'all, have a great one. I will see you soon. Thank you again for coming. Nice to meet you.